Jim, it's one thing to demand answers from China. It's quite another thing to actually get any.
Yes, very, very well put, Ash. Good afternoon to you. Yes, we can make the demands, but I'd be very surprised if we're going to get any answers. Look, we have to accept here, I think, that Australia is in an asymmetric relationship with China. They need us less than we need them. And the action on coal, the $14 billion export to China, makes that crystal clear. Now, people may argue that in the case of iron ore, that it's a bit different. It's a bit different indeed. It's $100 billion, not 14. And while Australia is in a very fortunate position of being the really only major, reliable and close supplier to China, quite clearly the Chinese are looking at their options here as well, and whether that does mean some pressure on Australian suppliers on the question of price. I'm old enough to remember when we had these arguments with Japan many, many years ago about prices of commodities going there when Japan was our #1 export market, and from memory we didn't do too well when downward pressure was being provided by the Japanese cartel that effectively ended up of steel consumers there. And I do wonder whether that's coming down the pike as well. And we don't have, as it turns out, that many visible friends within our region as far as this is concerned. If you go back to when the Chinese took action against our barley imports to China, what happened? Well, the United States simply took up the shortfall, and very pleased American farmers were, but we did not get any material support from the United States about that either. So this is a very, very difficult, precarious situation. One other thing I'd note on the way through is that noted economist Chris Richardson was saying yesterday that the high price of iron ore was propping up our budget and indeed making the task of recovering from the COVID recession that much more easy. But I wonder whether we can rely on that right through 2021.
Yeah, if iron ore gets targeted, we're in real trouble then, Jim. Just looking at the US, it's official now. The Electoral College votes are in, they're counted, they confirm Joe Biden will be the president. It is a shift, though, or perhaps a sign of the times in American politics, isn't it, when you see some Republicans simply refusing to publicly acknowledge the outcome or blatantly claim, even now, that it's a fraud?
Indeed. Look, it does point to the extent to which the Republican Party has now become the Trump Party, as it were. In effect, he has claimed ownership of and been receiving fealty from very, very many Republicans in many states and within Congress as well. Now, what this means for the future is very interesting indeed, whether the shadow of Trump, and look, it is the case that Trump's success at the presidential level has had a significant benefit to Republican members of Congress and the Senate, and indeed in state legislatures and governors as well. But whether the shadow of the presidency will continue to have an effect on the Republican Party right through in ensuing years is another matter. One other thing I would also point out is that one of the immediate tests of the behaviour of Donald Trump and the Republicans will be in some very important elections coming up in early January. 2 Senate seats up for grabs in Georgia, a state which went to the Democrats in the presidential election, I think for the first time since 1992, I think it was. And will that have an effect there where both of these seats could turn Democrat? And if they do, that would effectively hand control of the Senate to the Democrats. Now, I'm not sure how it's playing out at the moment, whether the recalcitrance of Donald Trump is assisting support for the Republicans in these 2 key elections, or whether it's having the other effect. But that will be the first important test of what's going on, the shenanigans that are now going on, the behaviour of Donald Trump in the wake of this most important presidential election, now certified by the Electoral College.
Yeah, ones to watch for sure. Jim Middleton, appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Ash.